In the heart of the Philippines, a nation renowned for its resilience and unity, a new challenge emerged that tested the very fabric of its sovereignty. The South China Sea, a vital maritime artery and a source of national pride, became the epicenter of escalating tensions between the Philippines and China. In August 2025, a significant incident unfolded near the Scarborough Shoal, a territory long contested by both nations. Chinese naval and Coast Guard vessels aggressively maneuvered to block Filipino fishing boats, leading to a collision that resulted in substantial damage to the Chinese ships and potential injuries among their crew. This confrontation intensified the already strained relations and underscored the volatile nature of the territorial disputes in the region. The situation further deteriorated in October 2025 when another collision occurred near Thitu Island. Both nations accused each other of provocation, while the United States condemned China's actions and reaffirmed its support for the Philippines, a key regional ally. These incidents marked a period of heightened tension, with the sovereignty of the Philippines hanging in the balance. Amidst this backdrop of uncertainty and external pressure, the Filipino people looked towards their leaders for guidance and reassurance. It was during this critical juncture that Manny Pacquiao, the nation's beloved boxing champion and former senator, stepped forward to address the nation. Pacquiao, a symbol of Filipino determination and grit, understood the gravity of the situation. His journey from the humble streets of General Santos City to the global boxing arena mirrored the struggles and triumphs of the Filipino spirit. Now, faced with a challenge that threatened the nation's territorial integrity, Pacquiao felt compelled to speak out. He recognized that the issue at hand was not merely about territorial claims, but about the dignity and rights of every Filipino. The fishermen, who had for generations relied on the bounties of the sea, found themselves harassed and intimidated in their own waters. Their livelihoods were at stake, and with them, the sustenance of countless families. Pacquiao's indignation was evident, yet he approached the matter with the composure and strategic mindset honed from years in the boxing ring. He knew that this was a battle that required not just strength, but wisdom and unity. Reflecting on his own life, Pacquiao drew parallels between his personal struggles and the nation's current predicament. He had faced formidable opponents, both in the ring and in life, and had emerged victorious through perseverance and faith. He believed that the same resilience resided within the heart of every Filipino. Understanding the weight of his words, Pacquiao prepared to address the nation. He knew that his voice carried beyond the boxing arenas and political halls. It resonated in the homes of ordinary Filipinos who saw in him a reflection of their own hopes and dreams. As he stood before the nation, Pacquiao's thoughts turned to his family, his wife Jinky and their children. He pondered the future he wished for them, a future where they could live in a country that stood proud and unyielding in the face of external pressures. Rooted in his deep faith, Pacquiao believed that this moment was a calling to serve his country in a capacity beyond sports and politics. It was a call to defend the sovereignty and dignity of the Philippines, to inspire unity, and to remind every Filipino of the strength that lay within them. With resolve and a heart full of patriotism, Manny Pacquiao prepared to deliver a message that would echo through the annals of Philippine history, a call to stand firm, to protect what is rightfully theirs, and to face the challenges ahead with unwavering faith and unity. In the midst of escalating tensions in the South China Sea, Manny Pacquiao's voice emerged as a beacon of hope and determination for the Filipino people. Known worldwide for his boxing achievements, Pacquiao had also built a significant political career, serving as congressman and senator. In September 2021, he announced his candidacy for the presidency of the Philippines, standing out for his firm stance against corruption and his unwavering defense of national sovereignty. During his presidential campaign, Pacquiao openly criticized then-President Rodrigo Duterte's approach toward China, especially regarding territorial disputes in the South China Sea. He promised to adopt a more assertive stance to protect the rights of Filipino fishermen and ensure that the country's territorial waters were respected. After the 2022 elections, even though he did not achieve the presidency, Pacquiao continued to be an active voice in defense of Philippine sovereignty. In 2025, facing new incidents involving Chinese vessels in disputed waters, He used his platform to call the nation to unity and resistance. The recent confrontations had shaken the Filipino consciousness. The August incident at Scarborough Shoal, where Chinese naval forces aggressively blocked Filipino fishing boats, resulting in damaged vessels and potential casualties, represented more than a territorial dispute. It was an assault on the dignity of every Filipino who depended on the sea for survival. Pacquiao understood that his words carried immense weight. His journey from poverty to global stardom had made him a symbol of Filipino resilience and determination. When he spoke, millions listened, not just in the Philippines but around the world. His voice transcended sports and politics. It embodied the spirit of a nation that had faced countless challenges throughout its history. The champion reflected on his own experiences growing up in General Santos City, where his family often struggled to put food on the table. He remembered the fishermen in his community, hard-working men who ventured into dangerous waters to provide for their families. These memories fueled his passion for defending the rights of those who continued to face similar struggles. Pacquiao emphasized the importance of leadership that prioritizes national interests and refuses to yield to external pressures. He recalled his own journey from a childhood marked by poverty to becoming a world champion, as an example of what determination and faith could achieve. This personal narrative resonated deeply with Filipinos who saw their own struggles reflected in his story. His message struck a profound chord among Filipinos, especially those living in coastal regions who depended on the sea for their livelihood. Pacquiao highlighted that the fight for sovereignty was not merely a political issue, but a matter of dignity and survival for many citizens. The fishermen who faced intimidation in waters their ancestors had navigated for centuries deserved protection and support from their government. The former senator also stressed the importance of strengthening the armed forces and Coast Guard, ensuring they were equipped and prepared to defend national territory. He understood that words alone were insufficient. The country needed concrete actions to back up its claims and protect its citizens. Furthermore, Pacquiao encouraged the government to seek strategic alliances with other nations that shared the same values of freedom and sovereignty. He recognized that the Philippines could not stand alone against a regional superpower, but with the right partnerships and international support, the country could maintain its position with dignity and strength. Faith had always been a pillar in Pacquiao's life, and he did not hesitate to invoke divine protection for the nation. He called upon Filipinos to remain united, maintain hope, and trust that with hard work and faith, the nation would overcome the challenges imposed by external forces. This spiritual dimension of his message resonated with the deeply religious Filipino population. Pacquiao's message was not just a call to action, but also a reminder of the resilient spirit that defines the Filipino people. He reinforced that, just as in boxing, where determination and preparation are essential for victory, the nation must be ready to defend its rights and sovereignty with courage and conviction. In a moment of uncertainty and tension, Manny Pacquiao's voice served as a catalyst for national unity, inspiring Filipinos to come together in defense of their homeland and face challenges with faith and determination. His words carried the weight of history and the hope of a nation refusing to bow to external pressure. As tensions continued to escalate in the disputed waters of the South China Sea, Manny Pacquiao found himself reflecting on the profound responsibility that rested upon his shoulders. The recent incidents had not only challenged Philippine sovereignty, but had also awakened a deep sense of historical consciousness within the nation's most celebrated son. The collision near Scarborough Shoal in August 2025 had left an indelible mark on the collective Filipino psyche. Images of damaged Chinese vessels and reports of potential casualties had dominated international headlines. But for Pacquiao, the true tragedy lay in the fear that now gripped Filipino fishing communities. These were the same waters where his countrymen had cast their nets for generations. Waters that had sustained families and built communities long before territorial disputes became front-page news. Pacquiao's mind wandered to the countless stories his mother, Dionisia Pacquiao, had shared about their family's struggles during his childhood. She had often spoken of the fishermen who would return to shore with their modest catches, their weathered hands testament to years of honest labor. These men were not politicians or diplomats. They were simple people seeking to provide for their families through the bounty of the sea that had always been their inheritance. The former senator understood that his voice carried a unique authority in this moment of national crisis. His transformation from a street vendor selling cigarettes to survive into a global icon had made him more than just a sports figure. He had become the embodiment of Filipino dreams and aspirations. When Manny Pacquiao spoke about sovereignty, it was not merely political rhetoric. It was the voice of every Filipino who had ever struggled against overwhelming odds. The recent confrontations had revealed the vulnerability of the Philippines in the face of a much larger and more powerful neighbor. Yet Pacquiao drew strength from his boxing career, where he had consistently faced opponents who were bigger, stronger, and seemingly more formidable. Victory had never come from size or intimidation, but from heart, preparation, and an unwavering belief in one's cause. As he contemplated the current crisis, Pacquiao thought about his children, Jimwell, Michael, Princess, Queen Elizabeth, and Israel, and the Philippines they would inherit. Would they grow up in a nation that stood proud and independent, or would they witness the gradual erosion of their country's sovereignty? This personal stake in the future intensified his resolve to speak out against what he perceived as aggressive encroachment on Philippine territory. The champion recognized that this moment required more than just patriotic speeches. It demanded a careful balance of firmness and diplomacy. His experience in the political arena had taught him that international relations were complex, requiring nuanced approaches rather than simple solutions. However, he also understood that there were principles that could not be compromised, and national dignity was foremost among them. Pacquiao's faith had always been his anchor during turbulent times, and now it provided him with the moral clarity to address the nation's challenges. He believed that the Philippines, despite its size and economic limitations, possessed something that could not be measured in military hardware or economic indicators: the indomitable spirit of its people. The former boxer reflected on the historical parallels between the current situation and the Philippines' long struggle for independence and self-determination. From Spanish colonization to American occupation, from Japanese invasion to the fight for true sovereignty, the Filipino people had consistently demonstrated their refusal to accept foreign domination. This latest challenge was simply another chapter in that ongoing story of resistance and resilience. Pacquiao understood that his words would be scrutinized not only by his fellow Filipinos, but by the international community. As someone who had represented the Philippines on the world stage for decades, he carried the responsibility of articulating the nation's position with both passion and wisdom. His message needed to inspire his countrymen while also conveying to the world that the Philippines would not be intimidated or coerced. The weight of history pressed upon Pacquiao as he prepared to address the nation. He knew that this moment would define not only his own legacy, but potentially the future trajectory of Philippine foreign policy. The boy from General Santos City, who had conquered the boxing world, now faced perhaps his greatest challenge: helping to preserve the sovereignty and dignity of the land that had shaped him into the man he had become. The morning sun cast long shadows across Manila as Manny Pacquiao prepared for what would become one of the most significant moments of his post-boxing career. The recent escalation of tensions in the South China Sea had reached a critical juncture, and the Filipino people looked to their national hero for guidance and inspiration during these uncertain times. The October 2025 incident near Thitu Island had further complicated an already volatile situation. The collision between Chinese and Filipino vessels had resulted in both nations exchanging accusations of provocation, while international observers watched nervously as the dispute threatened to spiral beyond diplomatic control. The United States had condemned China's actions and reaffirmed support for the Philippines. But Pacquiao understood that ultimately the Filipino people needed to hear from one of their own. In the quiet moments before addressing the nation, Pacquiao reflected on the profound transformation his country had undergone during his lifetime. He remembered the Philippines of his youth, a nation still finding its footing in the post-Marcos era, struggling with poverty and political instability. Yet through all those challenges, the Filipino spirit had endured, much like his own journey from the streets of General Santos City to the pinnacle of boxing greatness. The champion's thoughts turned to the fishermen who had become unwitting pawns in this geopolitical chess game. These were men who shared his humble origins, individuals who understood the value of hard work and perseverance. They had not chosen to become symbols of national sovereignty. They simply wanted to continue the livelihood that had sustained their families for generations. Their plight resonated deeply with Pacquiao, who had never forgotten the struggles of ordinary Filipinos. Pacquiao's approach to this crisis was shaped by the same principles that had guided him throughout his boxing career. He had learned that true strength came not from aggression or bluster, but from careful preparation, strategic thinking, and an unwavering commitment to one's principles. The Philippines might be smaller than China in terms of territory and military might, but it possessed something equally valuable: the moral authority that comes from defending one's rightful claims. The former senator understood that his words would carry weight far beyond the borders of the Philippines. His international stature as a boxing legend had given him a platform that few Filipino politicians could match. When Manny Pacquiao spoke about sovereignty and national dignity, the world listened. This responsibility was both a privilege and a burden that he did not take lightly. As he contemplated the message he would deliver, Pacquiao drew inspiration from his own experiences, facing seemingly insurmountable odds. Throughout his boxing career, he had encountered opponents who were favored to defeat him, fighters who possessed apparent advantages in size, reach, or experience. Yet, time and again, he had proven that heart, determination, and proper preparation could overcome any disadvantage. The champion's faith had always been central to his identity, providing him with strength during his darkest moments and humility during his greatest triumphs. Now, as he prepared to address the nation about its sovereignty, that same faith guided his words and actions. He believed that the Philippines, like David facing Goliath, could stand firm against a much larger adversary if it remained united and resolute. Pacquiao thought about his wife, Jinky, and their children, understanding that his words today would help shape the world they would inherit. The Philippines his children would know needed to be a nation that stood proud and independent, one that could engage with the international community as an equal partner rather than a subordinate state. This personal motivation added urgency to his public mission. The former boxer recognized that this moment required more than just patriotic rhetoric. The Filipino people needed practical hope, a vision of how their nation could navigate these treacherous waters while maintaining its dignity and sovereignty. His message would need to inspire confidence without being reckless, to demonstrate resolve without provoking unnecessary confrontation. As the time approached for him to address the nation, Pacquiao felt the familiar sensation he had experienced before every major fight, a mixture of nervous energy and focused determination. This was not a boxing match, but the stakes were arguably higher. He was fighting not for a championship belt, but for the soul and sovereignty of his beloved Philippines. The champion who had never backed down from a challenge in the ring now prepared to face perhaps his most important battle, defending the dignity and independence of the nation that had shaped him into the man he had become. Following Manny Pacquiao's powerful statement defending Philippine sovereignty, his words reverberated not only within the country, but across the international arena. The global community, already attentive to tensions in the South China Sea, turned its eyes to the archipelago, observing how the nation and its leaders would respond to this declaration of firmness and patriotism. International media highlighted Pacquiao's stance, emphasizing his transition from sports icon to an influential voice in politics and international affairs. Newspapers and news networks analyzed the impact of his words, considering them a turning point in the Philippine approach to territorial disputes with China. Foreign governments also took notice. The United States, historical allies of the Philippines, reaffirmed their commitment to the country's defense, citing the Mutual Defense Treaty of 1951. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, during a visit to Manila, reiterated Washington's firm commitment to its ally, emphasizing the importance of maritime routes for Philippine security and economy, as well as for regional and global interests. On the other hand, China responded with caution but firmness. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian stated that the United States had no right to intervene in maritime issues between China and the Philippines, emphasizing that China would continue to take necessary measures to defend its territorial sovereignty and maritime rights. Within the Philippines, the population reacted with a mixture of pride and apprehension. Many citizens saw in Pacquiao's words a reaffirmation of the indomitable Filipino spirit, a reminder that despite challenges, the nation would remain firm in defending its rights. Support demonstrations occurred in various cities, with citizens expressing solidarity and unity in the face of external pressures. However, there was also an understanding of the situation's complexity. Business leaders and economic analysts warned of possible commercial repercussions from a more assertive stance toward China, one of the Philippines' main trading partners. The balance between defending national sovereignty and maintaining healthy economic relations became a central theme in public and political debates. Pacquiao, aware of the various reactions, remained firm in his position. He recognized the economic challenges, but believed that a nation's dignity and sovereignty could not be compromised for commercial conveniences. His message was clear: the Philippines should seek international relations based on mutual respect and equality, without yielding to pressure or intimidation. The international community continued to monitor the situation closely. Regional organizations, such as the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, convened meetings to discuss the escalating tensions and seek diplomatic solutions. The European Union and other economic blocs expressed concern about regional stability, emphasizing the importance of resolving disputes through dialogue and international law. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, the government worked to strengthen its defense capabilities and seek strategic alliances that would ensure national security. Investments were directed toward modernizing the armed forces and Coast Guard, ensuring the country was prepared to defend its maritime interests. Pacquiao's stance also inspired a new generation of leaders and citizens to become more actively involved in national affairs. Civic movements gained strength, promoting education about Philippine maritime rights and encouraging public participation in formulating policies related to national sovereignty. The former champion understood that his influence extended beyond sports and politics. His life story, from selling cigarettes on the streets to becoming a world boxing champion, and now a defender of Philippine sovereignty, served as a powerful symbol of what could be achieved with determination, faith, and love for country. International boxing organizations and sports figures also expressed support for Pacquiao's position, recognizing his courage in using his platform to address critical issues affecting his homeland. This solidarity from the global sports community added another dimension to the international response to his statements. Academic institutions and think tanks began analyzing the implications of Pacquiao's intervention in the sovereignty debate. Scholars noted how his unique position as both a global celebrity and a former politician gave him unprecedented influence in shaping public opinion on complex geopolitical issues. The ripple effects of Pacquiao's words continued to spread across social media platforms, where millions of Filipinos and international supporters shared messages of solidarity and support for Philippine sovereignty. Hashtags related to his statements trended globally, demonstrating the power of his voice to mobilize public opinion. As the world watched and analyzed the unfolding situation, Pacquiao remained focused on his core message. The Philippines deserved respect as a sovereign nation, and its people would not be intimidated by external pressures. His words had indeed made history, transforming a regional dispute into a global conversation about sovereignty, dignity, and the rights of smaller nations in an increasingly complex world. In the days following Manny Pacquiao's historic declaration defending Philippine sovereignty, the nation witnessed an unprecedented surge of patriotic fervor that transcended social, economic, and political boundaries. From the bustling streets of Manila to the remote fishing villages of Palawan, Filipinos responded to their champion's call with a unity that had not been seen in decades. The fishing communities, particularly those directly affected by the territorial disputes, found renewed hope in Pacquiao's words. In Zambales, where fishermen had reported harassment by foreign vessels, local leaders organized peaceful gatherings to express their gratitude for having their plight acknowledged by someone of Pacquiao's stature. These hard-working men and women, who had felt forgotten by the political establishment, suddenly found their voices amplified through the champion's platform. Social media platforms became virtual rallying grounds for Filipino solidarity. The hashtag Defend Philippine Sovereignty trended not only domestically but internationally, as overseas Filipino workers from around the globe shared their support. From nurses in the United States to domestic workers in the Middle East, millions of Filipinos living abroad felt a renewed sense of pride in their homeland and its unwavering stance against intimidation. Educational institutions across the archipelago incorporated discussions about maritime sovereignty into their curricula. Universities organized symposiums and debates, while high school students participated in essay competitions about Philippine territorial rights. The younger generation, inspired by Pacquiao's courage, began to engage more actively with issues of national importance, understanding that their future depended on the decisions made today. Religious leaders from various denominations echoed Pacquiao's message, emphasizing the moral dimension of defending one's homeland. Churches, mosques, and temples became venues for prayers for national unity and peaceful resolution of territorial disputes. The spiritual aspect of Pacquiao's appeal resonated deeply with the predominantly religious Filipino population, who saw divine providence in having such a voice during these challenging times. Local government units across the country passed resolutions supporting Pacquiao's stance and pledging their commitment to national sovereignty. Provincial governors and mayors, regardless of political affiliation, recognized the unifying power of his message and the importance of presenting a united front in the face of external pressure. The business community, while acknowledging the economic complexities involved, also expressed support for a principled approach to international relations. Filipino entrepreneurs emphasized that true economic prosperity could only be achieved through partnerships based on mutual respect and equality, not through submission to intimidation or coercion. Cultural organizations and artists found inspiration in Pacquiao's words, creating works that celebrated Filipino resilience and sovereignty. Musicians composed patriotic songs, while visual artists created powerful imagery depicting the nation's determination to defend its territorial integrity. These cultural expressions helped translate complex geopolitical issues into emotionally resonant messages that ordinary citizens could understand and embrace. Veterans groups, comprising former military personnel who had dedicated their lives to national defense, expressed particular appreciation for Pacquiao's stance. These men and women, who had sworn oaths to protect Philippine sovereignty, found validation in having a civilian leader articulate the principles they had spent their careers defending. The overseas Filipino worker community, numbering in the millions, organized rallies and demonstrations in their host countries, showing the world that Filipino resolve extended far beyond the archipelago's shores. From Hong Kong to Dubai, from London to New York, Filipinos gathered to express their support for their homeland's sovereignty and their pride in Pacquiao's leadership. Academic institutions began incorporating Pacquiao's statement into their political science and international relations courses, analyzing its impact on Philippine foreign policy and its significance in the broader context of small-state diplomacy. Scholars noted how his unique position as both a global celebrity and a former politician had created an unprecedented opportunity to shape international discourse on sovereignty issues. The response from Filipino youth was particularly striking. Student organizations across the country organized peaceful demonstrations, while young professionals used their social media influence to educate their peers about the historical and legal basis of Philippine territorial claims. This generational engagement suggested that Pacquiao's words had planted seeds that would continue to grow long after the immediate crisis had passed. Even in the most remote barangays, where access to international news was limited, word of Pacquiao's stance spread through community networks. Local leaders shared the message during town meetings, while radio stations broadcast discussions about its significance. The champion's words had reached every corner of the archipelago, uniting Filipinos in a common cause, regardless of their geographic location or economic circumstances. This overwhelming popular response demonstrated that Pacquiao had successfully tapped into something fundamental in the Filipino psyche: the desire to be respected as a sovereign people and the willingness to stand firm in defense of that principle. In the aftermath of Manny Pacquiao's resolute defense of Philippine sovereignty, the international diplomatic landscape experienced a significant shift. The former boxer's impassioned stance had not only galvanized his compatriots, but also prompted a re-evaluation of regional dynamics among global powers. China, a dominant force in the South China Sea, responded to Pacquiao's declarations with a blend of caution and assertiveness. The Chinese Foreign Ministry reiterated its long-standing claims over the disputed territories, emphasizing historical rights and strategic interests. However, Beijing also recognized the potential repercussions of escalating tensions, particularly in light of the international attention Pacquiao's statements had garnered. In an effort to manage the situation, Chinese diplomats extended invitations to Philippine officials for high-level discussions aimed at de-escalating the maritime disputes. The United States, a long-standing ally of the Philippines, viewed the developments with keen interest. Washington reaffirmed its commitment to the Mutual Defense Treaty, signaling support for Manila's position. U.S. officials commended Pacquiao's courage in standing up for his nation's rights and expressed a willingness to facilitate multilateral dialogues to ensure regional stability. This stance was part of a broader strategy to counterbalance China's influence in the Asia-Pacific region. Within the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, member states found themselves navigating a delicate balance. Countries with their own territorial disputes in the South China Sea, such as Vietnam and Malaysia, expressed solidarity with the Philippines' assertion of sovereignty. However, they also advocated for a collective approach, emphasizing the importance of ASEAN unity in addressing regional challenges. The bloc convened an emergency summit to discuss a cohesive response, underscoring the need for a peaceful resolution grounded in international law. The European Union and other international bodies weighed in, calling for restraint and adherence to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. They highlighted the significance of maintaining open and secure maritime routes, which are vital for global trade. Diplomatic channels were activated to mediate between the involved parties, aiming to prevent the disputes from escalating into open conflict. Back in the Philippines, the government faced the complex task of translating Pacquiao's rhetoric into actionable policy. President Rodrigo Duterte, known for his pragmatic approach to foreign relations, found himself at a crossroads. While he had previously sought closer ties with China, the surge of nationalistic sentiment spurred by Pacquiao's statements necessitated a recalibration of his administration's stance. Duterte initiated a series of consultations with his cabinet, military leaders, and foreign policy advisors to chart a course that would honor the nation's sovereignty without jeopardizing economic and diplomatic relations. The Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs intensified its diplomatic outreach, engaging with counterparts in neighboring countries and international organizations. The objective was to build a coalition that would support the Philippines' position while advocating for a peaceful and lawful resolution to the disputes. Ambassadors were dispatched to key capitals to convey Manila's commitment to dialogue and cooperation. In the realm of public diplomacy, the Philippine government leveraged Pacquiao's global stature to further its message. The former champion participated in international forums, delivering speeches that emphasized the Philippines' desire for peace, justice, and mutual respect among nations. His personal narrative of overcoming adversity resonated with audiences worldwide, humanizing the geopolitical issues at hand. The media played a pivotal role in shaping the discourse. International news outlets provided extensive coverage of the unfolding events, analyzing the implications of Pacquiao's intervention. Opinion pieces debated the effectiveness of celebrity involvement in politics, while editorials pondered the potential for a new era of Philippine assertiveness on the global stage. As the diplomatic efforts progressed, there were signs of cautious optimism. Preliminary talks between Philippine and Chinese officials yielded agreements on confidence-building measures, such as joint maritime patrols and the establishment of direct communication channels to manage incidents at sea. While substantive resolutions remained elusive, the willingness of both parties to engage in dialogue was viewed as a positive development. The international community continued to monitor the situation closely, recognizing that the outcome would have far-reaching consequences for regional security and international maritime law. The Philippines' steadfastness, bolstered by Pacquiao's impassioned advocacy, had set a precedent for smaller nations asserting their rights against more powerful neighbors. In this complex interplay of diplomacy, national pride and international law, the Philippines stood at a pivotal juncture. The path forward required a delicate balance between asserting sovereignty and fostering cooperative relationships. The nation's leaders, with the support of their people and the guidance of voices like Pacquiao's, faced the challenge of navigating these turbulent waters with wisdom and resolve. As the dust settled from the diplomatic whirlwind that followed Manny Pacquiao's historic defense of Philippine sovereignty, the true magnitude of his intervention began to crystallize. What had started as a passionate response to territorial aggression had evolved into a defining moment that would reshape not only Philippine foreign policy, but also the broader discourse on sovereignty rights for smaller nations worldwide. The immediate aftermath revealed the profound impact of Pacquiao's words on international relations in the Asia-Pacific region. The United States, recognizing the strategic importance of the Philippines' firm stance, announced increased military cooperation and joint naval exercises in the South China Sea. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Manila had resulted in renewed commitments under the Mutual Defense Treaty, with Washington pledging enhanced support for Philippine maritime security capabilities. China, while maintaining its territorial claims, had been compelled to adopt a more measured approach to the disputes. The international attention generated by Pacquiao's intervention had made aggressive actions more costly from a diplomatic perspective. Beijing initiated confidence-building measures, including the establishment of direct communication channels with Manila to prevent maritime incidents from escalating into larger conflicts. Within the Philippines, the transformation was equally remarkable. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who had previously emphasized the need for balanced relations with China, found himself articulating a more assertive position on territorial sovereignty. His administration's declaration that the Philippines cannot yield on territorial disputes reflected the new political reality shaped by Pacquiao's courageous stand and the overwhelming public support it had generated. The fishing communities that had long suffered intimidation in disputed waters experienced a renewed sense of security and dignity. Government initiatives to protect Filipino fishermen were strengthened, with increased Coast Guard patrols and diplomatic protests against harassment. The men and women who had felt abandoned by their government now saw concrete actions backing up the rhetoric of sovereignty defense. Educational institutions across the archipelago incorporated Pacquiao's statement into their curricula as a case study in principled leadership and civic courage. Students analyzed how a single voice, backed by moral authority and popular support, could influence international relations and inspire national unity. His example became a template for how citizens could contribute to their nation's welfare beyond their professional achievements. The international legal community took note of the Philippines' renewed emphasis on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, as the framework for resolving maritime disputes. Legal scholars praised the country's commitment to international law over power politics, viewing it as a model for other nations facing similar challenges from larger neighbors. Regional organizations, particularly ASEAN, found new momentum in addressing collective security concerns. The unity displayed by member states in supporting the Philippines' position strengthened the bloc's ability to present a coordinated response to external pressures. This solidarity became a cornerstone for future diplomatic initiatives in the region. Pacquiao's intervention also inspired a new generation of Filipino leaders to engage more actively in international affairs. Young politicians and civil society leaders drew inspiration from his example, understanding that principled stands on important issues could resonate far beyond national borders. His demonstration that celebrity status could be leveraged for meaningful political impact encouraged others to use their platforms for public service. The economic implications of the sovereignty dispute continued to be carefully managed. While some business leaders had initially worried about potential trade disruptions with China, the international support for the Philippines' position actually strengthened its negotiating position in economic discussions. The principle that sovereignty and dignity could not be traded for commercial benefits became a cornerstone of the nation's economic diplomacy. International media continued to reference Pacquiao's intervention as a turning point in South China Sea dynamics. His ability to articulate complex geopolitical issues in terms that ordinary citizens could understand and embrace had created a new model for public diplomacy. The global reach of his message demonstrated how authentic voices could transcend traditional diplomatic channels. As months passed, the long-term effects of Pacquiao's courageous stand became increasingly apparent. The Philippines had successfully asserted its sovereignty without triggering a major conflict, proving that principled diplomacy backed by popular will could achieve meaningful results. The nation's international standing had been enhanced, with other countries viewing it as a reliable partner, committed to international law and peaceful resolution of disputes. The legacy of Manny Pacquiao's defense of Philippine sovereignty extended far beyond the immediate territorial disputes. He had demonstrated that true leadership requires the courage to speak truth to power, regardless of the potential consequences. His words had indeed made history, not just for the Philippines, but for all nations that refuse to surrender their dignity in the face of intimidation. In defending his homeland's sovereignty, Pacquiao had once again proven that the heart of a champion beats strongest when fighting for something greater than personal glory.